I guess I would tell you like the key to navigating an interview process is.
So I think the first thing about visibility being more important than ability, I think is correct, especially in a job market that's super competitive.
Try to find something that like you're excited about.
I tried with every single pivot that I made to leverage the experience that I had.
Within like a year of him starting the podcast, he got a promotion in his current company, got headhunted by 2 other companies, and
build your content, share it, because this is what people will look at.
The idea of telling a story has multiple values, right?
Welcome back to this episode of the How to Get a Job podcast. The episode that you are about to watch is a roundtable that we hosted in Orlando, Florida with some of our favorite clients in a mastermind. And this conversation was actually led by our very, very own Ellie. Ellie, welcome. What do you think they should expect from this conversation?
So I'll give some context to how I prepared for this conversation. Essentially what I did was I took what I knew about these people, these career coaches that I've been working alongside, and I took a look at their LinkedIn profile and I identified what makes them special, what makes them different. And then I asked them to expand on that. And so you're going to get a ton of different perspectives today. Whereas in our usual episodes, you get 3 perspectives, me, Daniel, and the coach that we bring on. But in this episode, you're going to hear a lot of different perspectives and a lot of great conversation and really, really good advice. If you are a job seeker right now, you need this episode. And what I will say to you too is take notes on what you're hearing and start to actually implement the actions that you get advice on within this episode. That is going to serve you so well. I am super excited for folks to finally hear this conversation that we had back in Orlando.
Enjoy the rest of the podcast.
Today, I am in Orlando, Florida with my favorite career coaches and my business coach, who was a career coach before. And I have a specific question to ask everybody, and I think we're going to get a lot of insight from their answers. Adam, I'm going to start with you. Adam, you have a track record of helping people land some awesome competitive roles at really big companies. And you've also worked with pretty massive organizations yourself, Boeing, Amazon. I feel like I hear a lot of horror stories about how these major organizations have really intensive and long recruitment processes. So I want to hear, would you agree with that? And why do you think that is? And then how do we navigate it?
This is a loaded question.
Yeah, it
is. I'm happy to jump in with some opinions. The first thing I would say is there's no perfect hiring process. It doesn't exist. I don't think it will ever exist. There's always ways to make it better. Some companies think that short works, some companies think that longer or more stages work. I've seen a variety of combinations do well, and I've seen combinations do bad. In my brain, I do, because I audit so many tech firms and I talk with hiring managers or product managers at those firms. I have a ranking system in my brain of like companies I think are doing recruiting very, very well and companies I think are horrible at it. Might surprise to find you, I think one of the best companies on planet Earth for recruiting is Spotify. The way that they handle every part of the process. I think Meta is one of the worst companies when it comes to the way that their system is set up. And you might interview with 17 people, right? There's a lot that can happen. But again, a company like Amazon is the size of Austin, Texas, right? Even within that company, there's going to be differences and nuances, and that's kind of true with most firms. I guess I would tell you the key to navigating an interview process is doing the due diligence to understand what you're gonna get. The first thing that I would be advising to career clients that I'm working with that are jumping into interviews is go learn as much about the process as you possibly can, starting with the recruiting team that has reached out with you. Those are the most, people closest to the process. Again, think about what interviewing at Meta might look like or Microsoft might look like. There'll be changes even business unit to business unit. There'll be preferences leader to leader. The recruiters are going to know that, right? So squeeze that lemon as much as you possibly can. Ask lots of questions to the recruiting teams. Ask about format and style and different the different assignments or take homes you might get. But arm yourself with as much knowledge as you possibly can before you jump into the process. I think it also pays to do a little bit of that due diligence when your company's shopping as well. Like before that phone screen call comes, it's helpful to even know a little bit ahead of time what things are going to look like. But yeah, to maybe get back to your question of what's a good interview process and what's a bad interview process, as a hiring manager, someone that is hiring at a big tech company, it is all about de-risking candidates. Right? That's a principle that would apply to someone running an incredibly small company, like many of the business leaders in this room. It's the same principle that applies to me at a gigantic, one of the world's largest companies. Is I need to make a hire. There's probably 1,000 people that could jump into this role and do a great job. I'm going to look at the people that are presented to me, and I'm going to try to figure out how to de-risk my hiring decision so that whoever I put in that spot, I feel confident about their ability to learn what I need them to learn, or teach them what I need to teach them, their ability to make impact quickly, or their ability to add or fit into the team or culture that I'm bringing them in. So I'd say at a high level, it's a de-risking process. That's why I picked the questions I picked. That's why I assign the things I assign. Do I blame hiring managers that want to do 7 rounds and 15, lunch check? Not necessarily, but run your business the way that you think you need to run it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. If you're doing a crazy long hiring process, but the candidates that you bring in are crushing it and doing awesome, great, right? Your business is winning. So it's a myriad of things. There's a lot of different levers to pull, but I think about it in terms of what I need to do to de-risk this hire as much as I possibly can before I hand them that offer.
Yeah. I'm going to rewind a little bit to what you were saying about understanding their recruitment process from the recruiter. I got this tip from you actually, which was if you're networking with people, let's say you really want to work at Amazon, you're finding people that work at Amazon, and maybe one of the objections that you would have to reaching out with somebody is, well, they've only been there for like 4 months. But that's actually a really good person to reach out to because they just went through the process. So they know it because they just did it. And they also feel your pain because they were just there too. Like not too long ago, they felt that pain of like getting a job in this market. So thank you so much, Adam, for getting us started. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Kyle, I'm going to head over to you. On your LinkedIn page, it says that you deserve to work in a job that lights you up, pays you what you're worth, and accelerates you towards your vision of your dream future. So I have 2 questions here. Really, one, what does a job that lights you up mean to you? And then second, how do you achieve that for your clients?
Yeah, so it's a good question because it is like a little bit touchy-feely, I think. So the way that I think about it is essentially I kind of look back to the journey that I had, and like the job that I had fresh out of college was this like cubicle data entry job, and I would just like dread waking up every day and putting on my suit and tie and getting in my car in the dark and driving all the way there and then like entering data all day. It was just like this never-ending cycle where like nothing was inspiring, the work wasn't meaningful, like I didn't feel like I was having an impact, and like it was just like incredibly draining. And then on the flip side, after I landed this job at Uber, I was waking up before I was even waking up in Seattle to be the first person into the office to open the door to like get to work every day. I was working weekends, I was working late, but like nobody was telling me I had to do that. Right? I was just like doing it because I was so excited to be a part of this team, to be working on this product. And so as people are, so like that's kind of like the idea that I have is like try to find something that like you're excited about. And I think that like the reason the folks that I work with are folks that are interested in startups, and there's so much new stuff going on and people that are building cool things, and a lot of it's driven by some sort of personal mission from the founders. And the more that you can kind of like tap into the things that like I am either a user of this product and I really love it, or I have a personal connection to the customers that we're working with, and like so that's meaningful to me. Like it's just a reason to that I've found whenever I've had that thing that's like pulling me, instead of like I'm feeling like pushed or that I should do something or I need to do something. whether it's like work in an industry or work in a type of job or whatever. I'm just not very successful in like landing those types of opportunities. But as soon as I tap into like, oh my gosh, like this is super interesting. The founders are interesting. The product is interesting. I'm a user, whatever. It's just so natural that I'm willing to do all of the things that are necessary to make me stand out in the process. And so when I'm working with people, one of the things that I'll say is like, when you're doing research on the company and you're kind of like going through these lists of companies or you're looking at these different products, like as soon as you feel this like, oh my gosh, like this is exciting, like don't worry about going down the rabbit hole. I actually like encourage people to like tap into that. And one of the recommendations that I have is like is to go on like as soon as you identify that like target company or whatever, something that's really interesting, like go on this information diet and consume all the information that you can about that company, listen to the podcast, the YouTube videos, whatever, because then that allows you to create interesting value deliverables. It makes your outreach far more genuine. It shows that you did all your research. And then when you get into an organization like that, you're like, wow, this is so exciting. Like, I'm living inside of this ecosystem that like, means something to me or whatever. And so if you're in that type of, or the way that I think about it is if you're in that type of environment, you're going to be significantly more successful because nobody's going to have to ask you to do the grunt work, or nobody's going to have to ask you to do the things that are necessary in order to make the team or the product or the company successful. You're just going to be like in it and excited and willing to do it. And part of that is like the subject matter and the type of company and the industry and things like that. And part of that could also just be like the role and like the opportunity that they're giving you. Like speaking from my personal experience, like after Uber, I joined a same-day grocery delivery startup that had actually been pitched to me months before in COVID. And before COVID, it was pitched to me as like, these guys are looking for an operations position for a rapid convenience store delivery. And I was like, rapid convenience store delivery? Like, why would anybody want that or need that or whatever? Like, it was just like not compelling. And then after COVID, it was like, wow, I see the product and they're hiring for somebody that's doing exactly the thing that I want, that's going to accelerate me towards that next thing. And so was I super excited about like same day grocery delivery? Not really. Like I saw the utility of it and I could see the mission that we were delivering things to people in need. But a significant portion of that was like the opportunity that they were giving me to really accelerate. And that really like, lit me up. And so that's what I try and coach people on is like, try to like cultivate that like energy and excitement. And when you start to feel that pull, that means that's a good sign, right? Like that's a good sign that like there's something there, whether it's the role or the industry or whatever. There's different ways that you can do that. But that's kind of like the ethos and the thought behind that.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle. And that actually brings me and transitions very well to you, Angela, which is part of your story is being a 5-time career pivoter. So what I would love to hear is like, one, what have you learned from your pivots? And then 2, like, how does that show up in your current practice with your clients and how do you help them through those?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I started my career off working in public accounting at PwC. I'm now a career coach. And so the journey there was certainly not linear. There was a lot of up and down. My first pivot I made was when I went into analytics at Stitch Fix. I had never used SQL before. I had never done any of that. But what I did do when I was at PwC was that I did some analysis. Even though it was in Excel, I helped to influence decisions. And so I tried with every single pivot that I made to leverage the experience that I had. And so with that, it started with, what am I aiming for next? And I tried to get super clear on like, what do I want to do next? And then reverse engineer, okay, what is it from everything that I've done before? How is that even remotely connected to what I want to be doing next? And so even when I went from Stitch Fix to Lyft, that was like very much an industry change. Stitch Fix was a personal styling company. We sold clothes. Lyft were essentially like a taxi, right? And so when I was interviewing there, a lot of what they had, and I think this is something I deal with my clients a lot, is that they're like, they're looking for 5 years of industry experience in like a transportation company. I was coming from selling sweaters. And so for me, I had to make that connection. And so the only person who knew that connection was myself. And so I remember in the interview process, them asking me like, oh, how is this, even similar to what you'll be doing here? What, if you didn't work at Stitch Fix, what you wouldn't know is that we were connecting stylists with our customers because it was a personalized styling company. And so it was like a two-way marketplace, similar to how Lyft is a two-way marketplace. You're connecting drivers with riders. And so we were trying to balance that out, but no one else would have known that other than myself. And so in the interview, I made sure to make that connection. And I was like, this is very similar. I'm already thinking about it like a two-way marketplace. That's why doing analytics here is going to be very similar, even though we're selling our product is very different here. And so that's the thing that I'm teaching a lot with my clients is really opening their eyes to how have you done anything similar? How can you potentially connect the dots of what have you done before that is even remotely similar? Or how can you look at this new business, at this company that you want to work at and solve their problem? Because that's the biggest question they're trying to assess. Kind of coming back to what Adam was saying, they're trying to de-risk the candidate. And so really, like, it all comes back to they're trying to find someone that they are going to get a large ROI from. Are you going to be able to solve the problem? Are you going to be able to make money, save time? And so by taking a look and making sure you know what is the problem that they're trying to solve, and then trying to collect evidence from your prior experience to support that, hey, I can solve your problem. I think that's like the biggest thing here. So I always work with my clients to say, like, when you're doing your resume, when you're preparing for an interview, you do not go in just summarizing yourself. That's probably the worst way you can go about it, because if you do that, all you will do is set yourself up to be the best candidate for your current job versus being the best candidate for the job that you want. So you need to start with what you want and then you back into that. So that's like my biggest learning from all the pivots that I made. Even when I went to work as a career coach at a startup, right before that, I was selling houseplants as an entrepreneur. That is not all similar to like someone wouldn't be able to be like, oh yeah, you would give great career advice from having sold a Monstera at a farmer's market. However, I was able to make the connection of, hey, I was working directly with clients all the time, talking to them, helping them advise how to take care of plants. But I myself have made several pivots throughout my career, and that's how that's going to help me succeed in this career coaching role. And so it's not going to be this like exact match. That's just not how the world works nowadays. And so you need to start with what you want, and then you find the evidence from your experience. So that would be my best piece of advice for anyone who wants to pivot or even just simply get a new job.
From the hiring side, when I listen to people talk about that stuff, right? Because we hire a lot of program managers. Program manager is an extremely overused and abused title. There's all kinds of things that fit into that. So we look a lot for transferable skills. I think you hit the nail on the head. The more that you can exit those questions on the result and the return on investment and the value that was created, the less that overlap is going to matter.
Yes.
Right? If hey, I didn't use HubSpot CRM, but maybe I used Twilo or some other CRM. I don't have the 7 years of HubSpot that you're asking for, but I'm close. If you can exit on, well, I learned that set of skills and I delivered something really impactful for these people or these customers or this team, that's the value is going to stick in my brain, right? Yep. It's not going to be so much, they can't learn this new skill, or I'm going to discredit them because they haven't, they have X number of years and not Y number of years. Focus in on the value. That's the language that the hiring team speak, and I think you're exactly right.
Yeah.
I like this a lot. Dan, I'm going to go over to you. I think you and I both agree, and I think everybody here agrees that visibility can often conquer ability, or maybe not conquer, but beat out ability. I would love to hear, what's the story behind when you realized this for yourself? Let's start there, and then I'll come with my second one.
So I think the first thing about visibility being more important than ability, I think is correct, especially in a job market that's super competitive. If you're applying to jobs where hundreds or even thousands of applicants are applying, it's likely going to have similar skill sets, similar qualifications, similar experience. So how are you standing out essentially? So the situation I got myself into is as a graduate, trying to apply for jobs that were, 20,000 applicants for these programs, like graduate schemes. And I was just getting rejected. And I was kind of falling into that black hole of applications. So I think that was the issue for me, is while I was basically unemployed for a while and I couldn't get a job, it was only after I thought, how can I do something different here? Like what can I do to actually stand out, as opposed to just apply and see what happens. So that's when I started pushing my attention more towards networking and like finding people in the company, finding recruiters, finding mentors essentially. And what I was able to do is kind of gain insights from those big companies to help me like navigate that job search. And then I was able to get referrals into them. And that kind of bypasses you around the black hole of job applications. So that's why I teach, like 50% of your effort should be put towards networking, not just, creating your resume and your CV and building out your application processes. It's actually go and find the people that are, because there's people behind these tools, the ATS systems and everything else. There are human beings there, there's hiring managers there, and they're going to teach you a lot about, what is required, what they're looking for, what the right skills are, and you're going to learn a lot about the company and all of those processes. So I liken it to kind of, if there's two people with similar skills, similar experiences, similar education, who are you going to pick? And they're both applying for the same job, but one of them knows the hiring manager, has had a great conversation with the recruiter, and has got loads of insights about the company. Who are you going to pick, right? So they're already on a better path. So that's how I look at visibility.
Less risky.
Yeah,
exactly.
It goes back to the same thing that we were talking about before, right? And like the more engaged you're going to be, the more likely you're going to be go and do those things that are going to make you stand out, right?
Yeah.
Like we have an example from a gal who landed a job after she got the offer, the hiring manager or the recruiter said that the COO, who was the hiring manager, when they were doing the interview debrief, they started the debrief, he pulled his computer out, he popped it open, he flipped it around, he hit play on the thank you video that she'd sent after the interview, and they watched it in its totality, and it was like, that's something, and then it was like done after that. Because they were like, if we could have hired, like we had 3 or 4 candidates, all of them had similar experience, if we could have hired all of them, we would. But they said like that was one of the big deciding factors. And it just goes to like the visibility of like, most people aren't going to do that because it's uncomfortable. And so if you can lean into that discomfort and be visible, then you're going to stand out, and it's going to show you that you want it more and reduce the doubt in the hiring manager's mind that you're going to be a flight risk or whatever.
Yeah, and motivation to apply to a company is a big factor in hiring, and that's what people miss, is they send hundreds of applications or just hoping for a bite. But you can tell as a hiring manager exactly the quality of that application and the reason for them applying. Whereas if someone is sending videos and documents and is solving the problem of the business because they've researched it and have had conversations with people, that they're really keen to join, and that's a big part of it. So
And Adam, I imagine for you, if you're interviewing with somebody, a candidate, and they have a real drive and desire and motivation to be on your team, you're probably going to pick them over somebody with the same, maybe even more experience, but isn't as motivated, doesn't really care about your team or what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I mean,
do you agree?
The busier the hiring market gets and the more crowded it becomes and the more qualified people get laid off, it is the really small nuances that start to make the difference in the hiring room. Just like you said, that's a fantastic example, right? Someone that took the time to design a 5-page pitch deck that explains how they'd solve a problem on my team is not a thing that the average person, even in the late stage of the interview, is going to do. So yeah, sometimes it's the thank you, sometimes it's the follow-ups, sometimes it's the prep that you put in and how you put that prep on display as you move through the process, but it's exactly right. I would say one of the simplest things that you can do that requires virtually no extra effort is explain the connection about something you're passionate or motivated about to the specific job. A lot of people miss that, right? Like when I say, tell me about yourself, right? Or, why are you here? Why do you want this position? Why do you want to work in this company? It's amazing how many people provide a terrible answer to that question. When really what I want to hear is like, I'm motivated to do your job description, right? Yeah. I wrote it. I wrote the job description. I posted it. My recruiting team posted it. And if they can connect their why to the specific work that I'm going to do, like you said, right? They can demonstrate that they're energetic and those kind of passions and motivations line up. Yeah, like that's catnip for hiring managers. Like, yes, this person wants to like get in and get motivated and get excited.
How many times have you heard like someone just say, read the values off the website, for example, or like the mission statement?
To try and put a percentage,
It's
it's like more than the majority.
yeah.
Right?
It's just these small things that you do that
Yeah.
that make you stand out because no one else is doing it. So
Especially the lower you go. Like if I'm
Yeah.
hiring at the entry to associate or maybe even mid-level, like that needle moves more towards like, well, this company has a leadership principle of this, and I'm really excited about that leadership principle. The higher you go, the more like principal level, director level, like you start to see those kind of tactics really pick up. But yeah, it's a little shocking.
There's something I want to double click on in there. And by the way, Kyle, thank you for giving me the double click
Yeah.
wording. There's something I want to double click on in there, and that was that you have to lay it out for them. Like make it crystal clear.
Yes.
Like tell them the story. Don't assume that they'll put two and two together. That's what I teach in like interviewing, and I'm sure Josh, you teach this with storytelling. Is like that's the message that we want to get across. So Dan, I want to go back to the second part of that question, which is, and I bet actually all of you have experienced this, where you have a job seeker, and maybe there's somebody listening right now who's thinking, well, I would love to establish a personal brand, but then if I change my LinkedIn around, my boss might notice. Maybe I don't feel that secure in my job. I might lose my job if they notice that I'm job seeking. I mean, what do we say to that?
Yeah, it's a real fear that some people would have, right? But I think your personal brand isn't just about getting a job. It's a lot bigger than that for me. It's broader. It's kind of you and your online reputation and everything about you. Mm-hmm. So, you don't have to actively say that you're looking for a job within content, within your profile. You can build your profile out so that it positions your career, your success and your achievements, and start creating content around that. If you want to then navigate the job search, you can do that kind of incognito. Mm-hmm. The other thing is if the profile's optimized to the roles you're applying for, say it's your career but you want to take a step up, then that's going to show up more in the recruiters on the recruiter side. So you'll attract opportunities to you. Mm-hmm. They're all managing DMs, so they're not going to be shown outwardly. Also with the open to work banner, if you are interested in attracting those types of opportunities, you can do it so that only recruiters see you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, these are just tactics you can use so that outwardly facing, it just looks like you're building your presence, your personal brand, and people are seeing that, but you're then attracting good opportunities. And then the other thing I'd say is you can use that vehicle to create good connections with people, like by reaching out directly to recruiters, directly to hiring managers and industry professionals, and having those conversations. They come offline. So if if they're not supporting that, your job search, obviously they're your employer, they're not going to do that. But there's just many tactics you can use to do it well under the cosh.
Can I jump in for
Yes,
one sec?
please.
So we talked about this earlier this week about nobody notices if you're wearing the same pants 3 days in a row, but you think they notice because you notice. And so the odds that your employer is browsing your LinkedIn profile and looking at your headline and noticing, look, if you put open to new roles because my current job sucks, yes, they will probably notice that. But if you reposition yourself slightly as like a thought leader in your industry, as opposed to I work for this company now and I do this thing, that's valuable to you, making you more attractive, as Dan was saying, but it's not something that they're going to absolutely notice and come and approach you and say, why did you do this? Are you looking for a new job? This is very suspicious.
And also, just depending on who your employer is, they might be very open to you doing this, or they might not. A lot of the time, the fear is in your own mind. Mm-hmm. So like when I started creating content myself, a massive worry was like, what are HR going to think? What are all my colleagues going to think? The hiring manager's going to think? And it was the opposite effect. As soon as I started creating content, they were sharing those posts and like coming to me with new opportunities within the company. Of like, oh, can you talk about what you're doing on LinkedIn here? I was like, wow, this is not the reaction I was expecting, So ask yourself, is it something that internally you're worried about, or have you actually heard that they've got a policy in place which says you can't do this? Because if you break through that barrier, they might. Yeah.
I have a really cool story of one of my best friends, and again, he was working. He works in new construction, so he's a manager at new construction, and he started building his brand not because he was looking for a job. He just wanted to build his brand. So I said, you should start a podcast. So he started a podcast called Breaks and Banter Podcast, and he started interviewing people in the real estate space. And he, which was really cool, is because he started growing his network. And within like a year of him starting the podcast, he got a promotion in his current company, got headhunted by 2 other companies, and literally the recruiter and the manager were like, we heard so many of your episodes that we already knew you before we interviewed you, and so we wanted to offer you this job. So his career, even though he was never like even passively looking, it just made the visibility that he got like was insane because he built his personal brand.
Yeah. And something I tell some of my clients too is this is your LinkedIn profile. This does not belong to your employer. So when folks who are job seeking, if their banner is like their company logo of the company that they're working at, I tell them that one, that could lead a recruiter to believe that you are like, I love my company, I never want to leave. And number two, you're now like giving your LinkedIn profile to their brand, and it's your LinkedIn profile.
There's unseen benefits as well for it. You know, one story for me is, again, I wasn't creating content to get out or get another job. I was just building my brand.
Yeah.
And I got a message from somebody who I didn't know, but I'd worked with at my old company. We were there at the same time, and she said, and it was like looking for a job question mark was the DM, and it was like something like, hey Dan, I know we worked together at BT for X amount of time. I didn't know you, but I love what your content is doing, and I culturally I feel like you'd be a great fit. So it kind of I feel like I know you. Would you be open to having a chat with the CEO? So I actually did go and have that chat, and it wasn't the right fit for me in the end. But just that message was like, I've managed to build this insane relationship with somebody without even meeting that person, just through content, and they've left and then thought of me for a job.
Yeah.
That's insane, opportunity.
And Ellie, back to what you said about this is your LinkedIn profile, this is your brand. I see many people would share their company's post. Like they think that they're posting, like, okay, my company did this and that. I'm sharing the post of the company and thinking I'm doing good to my profile. I would say you share your content, even not your friends' content.
Yes.
Build your content, share it, because this is what people will look at.
Mm-hmm. And Ned, what we've been talking about a little bit here is like that fear of what our boss might think. You work with professionals with international experience, and when I worked with professionals with international experience, some of the concerns that they have is that their experience that's outside of the U.S. is not being credited as much as experience that is within the U.S. So I see all of you nodding. We've all experienced this before. So then the question I have for you is, what strategies do your clients employ? Do you teach your clients to employ to get around this bias, or how do you coach them into thinking about it and strengthening their mindset around their experience that's outside of the U.S.?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Actually, they have, like, my clients have kind of unique challenges when it comes to find a job. So I would go with 3 things. Thing number 1 is you need to make sure that you remove all doubts and question marks that the employer might have about you, because you're coming from different country, different experience, and maybe you don't fit in the culture of the company. So the best thing to do is remove all these question marks, like work on your profile, your resume, LinkedIn profile, the same way like in the standard in the US. When you communicate with recruiters, communicate the best way. When you go to the interviews, make sure that you prepare as per the standard in the US. You know how to answer technical questions, behavioral questions, and make sure that you show them you fit in the culture. That's very important, because the last thing that employers want to do is to take risk hiring someone that they don't fit in the culture, or they don't fit in, like, I don't know, team culture. They don't know how to lead people, or they leave in 2 or 3 months from the time of hiring. That's very important. So this is number 1. Number 2 is I would always tell them to apply for companies and organizations that they have operations all over the globe. Now, if you are from Germany and you speak German, and there are some companies that they have operations in Germany, go and apply for these jobs first, because you have plus there, right? You speak the language, you know Germany, you can help them with that, and you are in the US. That's very important. And there are many international development organizations that they get fund from the US and they build great things in different countries. They can start with that. And I see a lot of my clients find jobs in these. They're non-profit. They make a lot of money, billions of dollars, and they pay too much. So they can start, they can start with that. Actually, my wife works with one of these companies.
So you're saying your wife gets paid too much?
Great situation.
We can cut that in
That's
post.
okay. The third thing is, which is very important as well, and Angela and Adam, they talked about it as well, which is showing and conveying the value instead of just telling about your resume or summarize your experience. And it's not about talking about your experience, it's about conveying and showing the value you're going to bring to the company. Now, if you can tell them that I have international experience, I did this and that, I can do this for you, I can improve your processes and can solve your problems, most of the time they're gonna pick you up and they hire you. I do the same. Like when I hire people, and some people like they have international, I hire people from international with international experience as well. I don't look at their resume, I look at the value they're gonna bring. Can they solve the problem? Can they do what I want them to do? If yes, regardless of their experience, I would hire them.
And if I can add one here, I think it's really interesting whether it's somebody making a career pivot or somebody coming from a country pivot, right? I think finding a job or interviewing really comes down to one question, like who is the best investment for the company? And when I always want to break that down into the risk reward. So it's like, one, can you do the job? So like, can I make my money back? But two, I also don't want to hire the most qualified person who will leave in 6 months. I'd rather hire somebody who's less qualified, who I know will be here for at least 2 years. And one conversation I remember having with the head of like HR at PepsiCo, the head of like the college program at PepsiCo, and he said, I was saying like, I don't understand how you as PepsiCo struggle to get talent. Like PepsiCo is such a big company. He was like, and why are you recruiting at like, I think UCF's a good school or even UF's a good school, but why are not you not recruiting at like the Ivy League schools? He's like, because they don't retain. We can't retain them for 2 years because we found that the best people long term are the ones who are willing to drive the trucks for 6 months, and people who went to an Ivy League school or even UF are not willing to wake up at 4 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning to drive the trucks. So the risk of them being here was so high. And they were able to calculate it to say if we hire someone and they were at this time paying them $60,000 a year, if they didn't stay with PepsiCo for 2 years, it cost the company over $150,000. So like they were able to quantify the cost. So when I was working with international students, and you know we still have 75 active clients, it always comes down to how you communicate the risk and the reward, and the person who can do the best at that usually is the one that gets the job, not the most qualified candidate.
Right. And you remind me with something, Danielle, here. This is a very important tip as well. Like I had a client who came to me and he started working with me. He is an accountant and he has extensive experience in his country. Now he said, you know something, I'm gonna switch to IT. I said, no way. No way. You need to focus on one thing. Now you have a foundation of accounting, build on that, find a job in accounting and deal with one challenge or one time, and then down the road, after 1-2 years, you can switch and do something else. But now don't come and put more challenges on you, like new to the country, new to the market, new career as well. That would be a lot to handle.
It's funny, the same advice I give you guys. Focus on one constraint.
Here
Here we go.
All right, Josh.
One final thing on that, like that's why it's so challenging in like the existing hiring market because there's so much talent that people are now that have more experience are looking at jobs that require less experience, and that's leads to a lot of frustration with those individuals. They're like, I'm overqualified for this role or whatever, and that's not necessarily a good thing, right? Like and that's exactly what you just said, and what you said. The reason why you don't go and hire that person with 10 years of experience for a 5 years of experience job is because of the flight risk of like, this person's only going to be here for like, this isn't really what they want to do. They might be telling me that this is what they want to do. And so, you know, am I going to be back on the hiring process? Nobody wants to go through the hiring process. Like the hiring managers just want to do their work. They don't want to like go through all the recruiting and the interviewing and everything like that. And so, you know, to think that you're going to have to go through this process in 6 months or a year again to find another person, re-onboard them, like, yeah. So, you know, that has its own challenges. But just talking about that in the existing market right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Josh, I'm finally heading over to you. And what I want to talk about with you is your emphasis on leading with empathy. Because in IO psychology, we do focus quite a bit on effective leadership. And so I'd love to hear for you, like, why in your experiences leading with empathy makes someone a better or more effective leader.
Sure. So there are a couple of aspects to that. One is the play on words of lead with empathy. So lead as in be a leader who has empathy, but also lead with empathy, meaning empathy first. So I put a premium. You noted earlier that I'm sort of a storyteller, and I started out trying to pitch myself as a storytelling coach. And after the second person said, "So why am I telling fairy tales in an interview?" I said, "The heck with this." So I left that branding behind. But the idea of telling a story has multiple values. You are conveying multiple things, right? If I tell you I went to the store and I bought a soda, I'm conveying information. There is no emotion in that story. There is absolutely a plethora of emotion in a job hiring story, in an interview story. And so if you tell the story in a way that conveys empathy, that elicits empathy from the listener, you are all of a sudden a much more attractive candidate, because you're telling the story, one, so that they hear your perspective, two, they empathize with the problem that you were suffering or that your business was suffering and why it was your problem, and three, when the resolution comes, they feel an almost palpable sense of relief, and you have conveyed that in a way that makes it valuable and shows that you have the skills to resolve those problems for them. They've put themselves in your shoes, but they've also put themselves in the shoes of your manager and can feel like, oh, this person can solve my problems too. And so leading with empathy, telling the story with empathy, allows them to feel more like you're capable of solving problems for them at the level they need them solved.
Okay. So it's starting with empathy.
It's both.
Not empathetic leadership?
It's both.
Okay.
Empathetic leadership is a different story, but it's still a story, right? It's understanding that people are human and understanding that those human beings who work for you, who work with you, because leadership is not all about authority, it's also influence. Those people who are alongside you for this journey need to be treated as humans. The fastest way to lose people is to treat them as replaceable parts.
Yeah.
Whether or not you believe they are is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One more question for you, Josh. You have your MBA. Congratulations.
Thanks.
I'd love to know, what was something that you learned in your MBA that was outside of your course material that has had an impact on you or served you?
Sure. So I would say I learned three very important things getting my MBA. The first and most important lesson was to not get an MBA, at least for me.
That's too late.
Yeah. It was too late by far. I wanted to start a business. And so I went to the number one entrepreneurship MBA in the country, Babson College, shout out. But I learned very quickly that the best way to get experience as an entrepreneur is not by learning from other people in a classroom setting, it's by JFDI, just do it. And so what I was learning throughout the experience was that the most value for me was gained in projects where I could leave the classroom and go speak to my potential customers for the idea that I was working on.
Yeah.
So that is not to say MBAs are valueless. In fact, they are very valuable, as I'll tell you in points 2 and 3. But for me, I needed to do a better job of vetting whether an MBA was right for my purposes and my end goal. Number two is a lot of the value of an MBA is in the network, which is why you see that Harvard MBAs get great jobs, not just because they are whip smart, they got into Harvard, legacies aside, but like they have a network built in the moment that they start there, let alone graduate, that allows them to leverage some of the best leaders in the world, the people who are in a great position to help them advance their career. So that's number two. Number three is it is not the same being in a business school program as it is being in a medical school program or even a law school program, where those latter two are extraordinarily theoretical followed by practical. The value of an MBA is in the practical, and it's not just the practical that the teachers bring, it's the practical that the other students bring. So I went in as a 26-year-old with virtually no worthwhile experience to share. I had a little bit, but not much. I gained so much from my fellow students, and we're sort of living proof of that, except our professor's also awesome. The value of that MBA is in the other students. So if your other students, if you're vetting a school where the average MBA student has 4 years of work experience or even 5 or 6 or 10 years of work experience versus somebody who has 20 years of work experience, there's just a tremendous amount of value you will gain in classroom settings, in co-working settings from your fellow students that you're not necessarily going to get when the students have minimal experience.
Josh, going back to the point, which is it's very important to share your story and storytelling. You inspired me to hire a storytelling expert in my program. Right? It's going to be a great idea for my clients after working on all of these things, resume and everything, how to tell their story. That's very important.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Thanks for hiring Josh.
Thanks for not hiring Josh.
Officially, Josh is not.
All right, I'm going to close this out with you, Daniel. You've been the career coach that has had probably the most influence on my career coaching practice. You've worked with some of the most disadvantaged job seekers, international students, freshly graduated. So what I want to know is, what was the change maker for your most successful clients?
So, there's advantages and disadvantages for international STEM students. Most of them have more experience than their American peers. They're coming, most of them were from India. They had 4 to 5 years of experience working in India and had really good technical knowledge. They were just very poor at communicating those transferable skills. They had limited beliefs. They were very poor at communicating their value. And also, hiring an international student has additional risk. We're very poor at communicating or minimizing that risk. And so if we can understand their strengths and their weaknesses and also opportunities and threats, like a SWOT analysis, and we're able to focus on saying, hey, you already know how to do the job. Odds are, you're more qualified than most of your peers. And most people, when we're looking to find a job, we are thinking that we're getting disqualified because we're underqualified. But for this particular group, they were getting disqualified because they were overqualified, because the risk of hiring was so much higher. So I was teaching them not to focus in the interview on why they are so qualified, but focusing on why they're looking to build a career and they're looking for a job. So it's actually changing the way the narrative and the story of saying, I'm looking to build a career here. I'm excited about working in this company, this product, because they also need sponsorship, right? And so it's more focusing on the communication skills and how they communicate throughout the process, how they network, because they're very direct. It's a cultural thing. They'll just be like, I need a job, or at the end, it's like, I need a job in 34 days, so I got to go back to my country. And the hiring manager like, I really feel bad for you, but I'm not going to hire you just because of that, right?
Thank you for watching.
I'm Adam Lorna. I'm a career coach and hiring manager, and I work specifically with mid to late career professionals trying to break into hyper-competitive roles or hyper-competitive companies.
Hey, my name is Nidal Kaznadar. I go by Ned. I'm a career coach for professionals with international experience. I help them land their dream jobs.
Hi, my name's Dan. I'm the founder of GradVance and a career coach. So we help UK-based graduates get jobs in the UK.
Hi, I'm Daniel Botero. I'm the founder of Opni, and I work with Career Coach to help them build profitable, scalable, and impactful businesses.
Hi, my name is Kyle Thomas. I help ambitious startup job seekers land career accelerating roles at world-changing startups.
Hi, I'm Angela Lau. I help mid-senior marketing and analytics professionals get unstuck in their job search.
I'm Josh Bob. I help mid to senior software ICs and managers unlock their career growth.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the How to Get a Job podcast. I know I did. I really enjoyed recording the episode. I hope that you got a lot of great advice and value out of it as well. If you like what you're listening to, please like and subscribe. That helps us bring on better career coaches and do more for you and serve you better. So like, subscribe, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.